How to take down a charter school. This is a story that I find infuriating, fascinating, and well worth it for those of you that want to. We'll put the story up. It's from theatlantic.com. John McWhorter is the author of the piece, and it tells a story that people should know because it deals very much with social justice rhetoric and wokeness and whiteness and all these different concepts that are constantly being used and leveraged and alleged on the left, depending on what we're talking about. There's a charter school in Brooklyn called Ascend. In fact, it's now a network of 15 schools, but it was founded 10 years ago by a man named Stephen Wilson. And Stephen Wilson, who you would think would be celebrated by the left because he founded a charter school that has done what so many public schools across the country cannot figure out how to do, which is to take young, predominantly minority, black and Latino children who are from underprivileged backgrounds and make them exceptional students, doing well, getting good grades, beating the national or the state average on the test scores. Success, like Success Academy here in New York, another place that's been made controversial because the left really doesn't like success that goes outside the public school model because public school is actually a form of socialism and central planning runs it, and it is a mediocrity factory and a jobs program. I mean, that's what the national level public school system is. And to call it a mediocrity factory might be generous. Probably is very generous, actually. But charter schools sometimes do what we're told is so hard to do, which is to find a way to inspire and promote learning among underprivileged minority children. You would think the left, which talks all the time about diversity and inclusion and equity and multiculturalism, you would think the left would say, oh my gosh, this is great. How can we do this? How can we find a way to replicate this success? But no, they want to shut it down. They want to shut down these charter schools when they can. They want to make sure that people don't believe that these different philosophies when it comes to education are more effective than the one-size-fits-all approach of the bland intellectual gruel that is served up to our children courtesy of the Department of Education across the country. But this innovative educator, Stephen Wilson, put up a blog post that I have read. I have read the piece by John McWhorter, the blog post from this past summer written by Stephen Wilson, the founder of Ascend Charter School, and then also the change.org petition from Friends of Ascend, they say, asking for this guy to get in trouble. By the way, he has been fired or removed from his position by the board of the very charter school system that he founded that was so successful for so many young, underprivileged minority children. He's been kicked out. Why has he been kicked out? Because he wrote a blog piece, The Promise of Intellectual Joy, that is really worth reading, by the way. I mean, it's only about 8 pages long, and I was impressed with his willingness to look at some of the educational missteps in this country's past and how there has been for now over 100 years a debate that has been raging back and forth where people in the educational establishment, now we're not really talking about university level, we're really talking about grammar school and high school, but there have been these moments in time when, or periods of time, when the educational establishment was saying, oh, we don't need a liberal education. We don't need an education that tries to inspire the mind, promotes a joy and love of learning. Let's just teach people how to keep themselves clean, how to do the basics of living day to day, of, computational arithmetic for buying things in the store. Let's teach them these basic life skills, essentially, at the expense of teaching them about the life of the mind. And that these movements have popped up at different times, and it popped up, for example, in the early 20th century. This was all in this Promise of Intellectual Joy piece written by this esteemed educator, that when there was a big surge of immigrants into the country, for example, that the educational establishment, public schools in this country, was pushing for effectively dumbing down the teaching so that you're not learning the life of the mind, you're not learning about the promise of intellectual joy, and trying to give that to everyone as a gift for the rest of their lives. You're teaching them how to be cogs in the state machine, how to be able to more or less function day to day in a way that they're not too much of a drain on the state. A tremendously condescending approach to education. Now, Stephen Wilson is taking the approach that this is wrong, that this should not be done. And here's some of how John McWhorter describes this debate. Wilson decries how the pushback against traditional education, with its rote learning and culturally narrow range of perspective, has often entailed a pendulum swing too far in the other direction toward a gauzy, student-focused approach that de-emphasizes the authority of the teacher, or, most disturbingly, the learning of facts. Wilson's problem is with people such as Rousseau and John Dewey and even Dwight D. Eisenhower, who espouse what Wilson considers anti-intellectual ideas about how and what children should learn. Wilson observed in his blog post, this is where he gets into trouble, folks, this is where they come after him. Wilson observed in his blog post that liberal education is under fresh attack, this time as whiteness. The petition states, this claim equates a liberal education with whiteness, the very opposite of Wilson's argument. The underlying message here, say the petition writers, is that a liberal education is whiteness. Whiteness is therefore intellectual, and any challenge to a liberal education is a challenge to whiteness, so any challenge to whiteness is anti-intellectual. Even following the rather tortuous logic here, Wilson gives no indication of thinking that all challenges to something as vast as white hegemony qualify as anti-intellectualism. Elsewhere, Wilson criticizes the idea that focus on a text is a kind of white supremacy. That's right, my friends. Focusing on the words in a text when you're teaching literature or English language, that is decried in some places in the educational system now as white supremacy. The words. Focus on the words. That's white supremacy. Oh? Says who? Says people in the educational establishment. Quote, that may sound bizarre, but at a conference about white supremacy culture in education convened by the New York City Schools Chancellor Richard Carranza, attendees were shown a slide explaining that white supremacist thinking includes, quote, worship of the written word and even objectivity, end quote. Educational conference at the highest level here in the public school system in New York City that is making the claim and instructing other educators to propagate this claim that objectivity and the written word itself can be a form of white supremacy. And if you're wondering what the heck is going on, you are not alone. But it doesn't matter what he says. It doesn't matter what he really wrote. The petition quotes Wilson's concern and then, with no argumentation whatsoever, flags him as protecting white supremacy culture and a paternalistic orientation toward the work of social justice reform. Now, my friends, here's the real problem. Here's why this guy Wilson had to lose his job after doing more for minority children in New York City than any of these social justice activists on the Change.org petition. The problem is that he pointed out that there is a movement underway right now, as there has been at different times in the past, to teach differently to minority children, to teach in a way that is more culturally sensitive and culturally inclusive. And so that means making choices, making distinctions that go away from trying to inspire everybody with the same ideas and ideals and great literature and great learning, and teaching differently to minority children in order to give them something that they will be more apt to take to and to handle well in the classroom. Now, they think, the social justice left thinks that doing this, teaching differently to minority children in public school, is something that should be promoted and celebrated. And that's why they're also attacking a culture of objectivity and words on the page meaning what they mean as a form of whiteness. And this is all, I have the documents in front of me. This is all in the petition. And that this is white, toxic, patriarchal masculinity in the classroom, right? Read poems from the great poets and read what they say, not reinterpret it and write your own poem that has the same title but, is more culturally in line with what you wish the poem said. That's anathema now. That's no longer acceptable. And there have been other times in history when in the public school system in this country, people have argued that certain groups, immigrants, the poor, minorities, should be taught differently. And the promise of intellectual joy that Wilson is trying to advocate for is that all people, all children have the same intellectual inheritance, which is this, that we should all be striving for greater knowledge and understanding. The roots of a liberal education are to give you a joy of learning and understanding and the process of wrestling with thoughts and coming to conclusions and understanding reason and understanding logic and thinking about your place in the world. That is everybody's inheritance, irrespective of skin color, irrespective of socioeconomic background. And the children should all be given the best that we can in terms of the life of the mind and the promise of intellectual joy. But this runs afoul of the social justice activists who want to say that this is, all the authors that are being taught in this classroom, it's all old dead white males. It doesn't matter if the book is is timeless or incredibly well written or deals with a historical period that all human beings should be, very familiar with. In fact, if you were really wondering the lengths that this social justice group was willing to go to get Stephen Wilson, founder of the Ascend Charter School System, fired, you should remember that when he specifically, quote, when he specifically cites the great African-American writers and intellectuals from American history, he cites Martin Luther King, he cites Frederick Douglass, he cites James Baldwin. He says, this is, and their timelessness and their role in our educational system, people understanding the greatness of their thoughts, their writing. His citation of great African-American authors and writers of the past and the need to make sure that they are represented in the classroom because of their intellectual worth, because of their greatness, that is taken as further evidence of his transgression by the social justice left. I bring you this. Quote, the author asked, what would they make of Frederick Douglass's 4th of July speech, Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail, or James Baldwin's letter to his nephew, my dungeon shook in the fire next time. The author concludes this point by stating it is hard to imagine a more destructive message to teachers and their students. This too will surely become seen as another wrong turn on the way to equal opportunity. These statements, this is from the petition to get this guy fired, okay? These statements represent a commitment to protecting white supremacy culture and paternalistic orientation toward the work of social justice reform. This is from the petition that got this guy fired from the 15-school charter school network that he built from the ground up. This is why he got fired. He was citing great African-American intellectual and literary heroes from within America, from within our own tradition. And they viewed that as another transgression. How dare you use great black authors to make the case that young black and Latino children have heroes from within their own intellectual tradition that are promoting the same virtues and greatness and life of the mind that other authors are, and therefore the case of the social justice left that you have to dumb things down or you have to do a different course load, different coursework based more on inclusion and equity and all these other things. that that's not necessary. In fact, that's the wrong path. This guy's a liberal, folks. It's clear from how he's writing. This guy's a liberal leftist. But he understands education. He understands the need to inspire the mind of all people. He takes the very basis of what we would think is our need for equality and equity, that we are all God's children, that we are all equivalent in terms of our moral worth, and we all should be treated equally as human beings, and our ability to grow and the life of the mind to grow within us should all also be treated equally as human beings. The social justice left does not see it that way. They want different approaches based on who different people are. And this guy's fighting that. When he points out how absurd that is and how it has failed historically and how there have been other times when people thought that they were doing a favor to the new immigrants. They thought they were doing a favor to the poor, to people in urban ghettos, to people, by changing curriculum to make it so that it was, less of a challenge or that it was more representative of inclusiveness and diversity in terms of the reading list or whatever it may be, and that wasn't a good idea, that we've tried experiments failed in the past. The left has to crush this guy. And there's one more point here about all of this that I thought was this was fascinating stuff, and we'll put it up on Facebook.com /Buck Sexton so you guys can see it. Producer Mark, please remind me to make sure we do that. McWhorter, who, by the way, is an African-American writer, who's the guy who wrote the piece breaking all this down, McWhorter says at the end that what you see from this petition is that it's not that they, the people writing this petition, this Change.org petition to get this guy fired, it's not that they think calling someone white supremacist is just a tool that is useful for blunt force politics, which it certainly is. But he says that it's clear from reading this petition that they view calling someone a white supremacist as in and of itself all that is necessary for someone's destruction. They essentially, they believe the argument. Once you've called someone a white supremacist, they must be that and must be treated as such without any argument, without any underpinning justification. Terrifying in the implications. But this is where the social justice left has gone. Destroying good people who do good things for minority communities while pretending to be caring about the very minority communities that were helped by the other guy. Team, I hope you're enjoying the simulcast here on Pluto TV, channel 248. The First is the fantastic channel. I hope you're all becoming very used to watching me on that. Please tell friends about it, spread the word far and wide, and also make sure you download the Buck Sexton Show on iTunes or on the iHeart app. Tell somebody about it this week. All right, team. So as we discussed, today is Veterans Day, and I want to bring on, we have many good friends who are veterans who are frequent guests here on the show. Our friend Brandon Webb joins us now. He is the founder of SoftRep.com, which also owns Crate Club, and they have a show inside the team room he's going to tell us a bit about. Also, Brandon is a former Navy SEAL himself. Brandon, happy Veterans Day, man. Thank you for your service. What are your let's just start with your opening thoughts today. It's a day to actually appreciate those who have served.
My thoughts, and thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. My thoughts are, this is a day to acknowledge, veterans that have served, but in the larger picture, I think your audience would appreciate the fact now more than ever, we need to really think about, what we're doing abroad and do we really have a well thought out foreign policy strategy in place? Because you and I have both lost friends since 9/11, and I hate to look at what we're doing in Afghanistan now, almost 20 years in, and I think we just have to really hold our politicians accountable and make sure that we're putting forth America's best and brightest to a cause that we can get behind as a country.
And do you think we should get out of Afghanistan, Brandon? I know you served there.
Yeah, honestly, the mission when I was over there was very clear. After 9/11, I deployed in 2001, 2002. It was till a bunch of bad guys and wipe out the training camps, which we did. And personally, I think we probably would have been better off packing up and leaving in 2003. And I just look at, the amount of billions of dollars pumped into that country, and really what are we going to have to show for it? And, ideally, if we look at it, if we pulled out tomorrow, the Taliban is back in power. So it's just one of those things, not go on a tangent, but you look at Syria, right? I think Trump made the right call by pulling troops out of Syria because we don't really want to get into a proxy war with Russia and Iran.
And so you think Syria is the right move? Do you feel like the administration, by and large, I mean, when you talk to veterans about how Trump is doing as commander in chief, what's the overriding sentiment that you pick up?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, right? I think largely the sentiment that I hear among my fellow veterans is that Trump has been a pretty good commander in chief, like in the form of really respecting the troops, which, I served under the Clinton administration when I first joined the Navy. And it was well known amongst all military service members that there was kind of a disdain of sorts for men and women in uniform. And that's just not good for morale, right?
Yeah, that is clearly the case. Brandon, tell us about Inside the Team Room, this show that you guys have launched over at SoftRep.
So the first Team Room show we did was back in 2012 when we launched SoftRep.com. It actually featured Chris Kyle, who was the American Sniper at the time. Him and I had 2 books out together, mine being The Red Circle and his being American Sniper. And that show did extremely well. We since pulled it down out of respect for the family, but the series have carried on. So we just launched a new series on SoftRep.com called Inside the Team Room, Navy SEAL Snipers. It features myself, Charlie Melton, who worked with me as an instructor at the sniper program, and really goes into like areas of conversation that you just don't find on typical television or cable programming. And that's what I think really makes the show special is, Charlie can, talk about the struggles of transitioning from active duty to civilian life, but also, the time he shot someone at 60 yards with a 50 cal sniper rifle. So the stories are engaging, and, I think people are really going to enjoy the show.
Where do people go to find it?
At SoftRep.com. We put the first 3 episodes on YouTube, on our YouTube channel for free. But we have a military version of Netflix on SoftRep, so people can sign up for monthly and access the rest of the series there.
Former Navy SEAL and SoftRep.com founder Brandon Webb. Brandon, my friend, great to have you on the show. Happy Veterans Day to you, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, brother, and keep up the good work.
It's time for roll call.
All right, let's get into some of our emails, our Facebook posts, facebook.com/Buck Sexton if you want to send in a note there. And if you want to do stuff on the email, you want to kick it old school, the way to do that is to write to us at teambuck@iheartmedia.com. Carl says, Buck, Carl here, just saying you sound like the guy off Princess Bride, that Mel Brooks played, or the witch that yells, it's the inflection of the tone that's hilarious. When do I sound like the princess? Oh, when I do Bernie? Bernie Sanders? I don't know who we're talking about here. Well, as far as Joe Biden goes, he needs about 4 or 5 years of Prevagen. What? And producer Mark, Huey, Dewey, Louie, and Scrooge McDuck. Okay. Thank you, Carl. I don't really know what's going on here, Carl. I appreciate you writing in. All right. Benny and the Jets. Hey, Buck, how many more slanted, biased, non-attributable, false, misleading, quote, news articles will it take before conservatives on Capitol Hill begin using Alinsky's tactic of ridicule as a most potent weapon? If a conservative is asked to comment on a story from the New York Times, They respond every time. They didn't read it, nor do they comment on anything that from a particular fraudulent source will be the American people. Bob, woo, shields high, Benny. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know where we're fighting. We're fighting the anti. We're in the media fighting the anti-media war. That seems to be what's going on here. Karen, about Christine Blasey Ford, right? She can't remember where or when that party was, but she claims Brett Kavanaugh assaulted her, but she remembers she only had one beer. When my alcoholic clients say one beer, they mean a 40-ounce bottle. Well, Karen, as you know, I think that Blasey Ford was a political hit, and I think that she was probably just delusional, but definitely incorrect and possibly lying intentionally. But that's where I am on this. Let's see here. Lowell writes, I listen to your show because of your version of the day's events. I really like the roll call structure of interaction with your listeners' opinions. Taking calls from people in the middle of the show is what everybody else does. It gets old. I really like everything you're doing to expand your media company. Kudos to producer Mark. Yeah, well, we appreciate producer Mark. We just don't want him to, get a big head or anything. Because now we're doing all this cool new stuff, and producer Mark is, running the cool new stuff. So.
Don't worry, my head could never get as big as yours.
That is a literally true statement, because my cranium is giant.
I meant literally and figuratively.
Oh,
but,
there you go. But producer Mark is here to make sure that the Buckster's feet stay on the ground here in the Freedom Hut, not floating up into the sky. Don't worry about that. We have Dixie writes, hey, Buck, just wondering if you've heard the new ad for the Hartford Insurance Company. The buck starts here. I have not. But I will. I will check it out. John writes, Buck, Trump is the ultimate capitalist. As such, just the fact that he is a direct to the government swamp and bureaucrat, blah, blah. Wait, what? Hold on. Trump is the ultimate capitalist. As such, just the fact that he is a direct, there we go, to the government swamp and every bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., that's one of the reasons they hate him so much for as long as they do. John. Yeah, John, I do think that you're onto something here with that Trump is a threat to the swamp. They recognize that, and so they act accordingly. So there you go. Jacob, I love that you have an official email now. I'm doing my best to get out the word about Team Buck and recommending the podcast to all my friends. Go Team Buck with your shielder on it. Jake in upstate New York. Jake, thank you, man. I really mean it. Those of you that can, please tell your folks, tell your conservative friends to listen to the Buck Sexton Show. It is the single most helpful thing you can do is to get somebody that who doesn't already listen to the show to listen. That is a game changer for us here. All right, now we'll go over to the Facebook side of things. We got Jonathan writes, Buck, producer Mark, don't go knocking out libs. The camera is mightier than the progressive mouth. Point it their way and they melt like the witch from Oz. That is all. Thank you, Jonathan. Don't worry. We are not violent types in here. But producer Mark was just saying, if anybody were to be disrespectful to Mrs. Producer Mark, there would be hell to pay, which I back 100%.
And that's different. That's not just me being violent.
No, that's you just...
Yeah. Standing my ground.
Standing your ground, being a man. Yeah, that's right. Totally. But Jonathan, I know, he doesn't want us to give any liberals a knuckle sandwich. Remember when people say, I'll give you a knuckle sandwich? That's, old-timey stuff, old-time stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to give anyone a knuckle sandwich unless they start with
really
me.
Deserve it, yeah.
Yeah.
Julia writes, Buck, great show as always. I agree with you. You have to go with your instincts first. No mouth guard. Might as well wear an Avengers shirt and Crocs while you're at it. Good teeth are for TV people anyways. Shields high. Thank you, Julia, I think. I think that's helpful. I'll take it. I'll roll with it. So, yes, indeed. The mouth guard, I have not yet been able to get that thing to be what I want to do. So... but I'm working on all the things, working on all the stuff. Amanda writes, thanks for the book recommendations. Also, Endgame, the new Marvel movie, stunk. I was so mad that I spent all my time watching it. Yeah, she's right, isn't she, Mark?
No. She is very, very wrong.
Just saying. Put another one on the board for the Buckster.
That's like 2, and the rest of them are with me.
Yeah,
so.
But the ones who know what's up. You know what I watched over the weekend? Can I recommend it? I watched The King on Netflix. It was pretty well done. It's about Henry V. The Battle of Agincourt is pretty good. And the battle sequence they did, I feel like, was hyper realistic, which was an interesting way to go for that period. They did not. It wasn't a lot of these battles. They have a guy who, is standing in the middle of the battlefield and he's like cutting down people left and right, and it's all very choreographed. And he's like, yeah, and you can see him and everything. This battle was just like a mayhem. I mean, dudes rolling around in the mud, stabbing each other in the eyes with sharpened sticks, crushing each other, horses falling on top of people. I mean, it was a little bit like the best episode of Game of Thrones probably ever, which was the Battle of the Bastards, where you had that fight sequence. But that was stylized, but it was pretty well done, I thought. This was not a very stylized battle sequence at all, and it was good. The movie itself, though, I feel like drags a little bit, it's a little slow in some places. But it's a Netflix movie. It's pretty good. But yeah, if you want to see something about Henry V and John Falstaff doing their thing, I thought it was a solid enough effort. I watched it over the course of the weekend. Lauren writes, "Hey Buck, I just started watching your show on Pluto TV using our Roku. A couple comments. The audio volume between your show and the commercials is significant. The commercials are too loud. Your show is too soft. There's more complaints about commercials. Well, we love our sponsors, but Lauren, we will pass this on to producer Mark, and he can see if he can work some of that producer Mark magic to do all the things, make all the things happen." James. Dun, dun, dun. I side with producer Mark. I support the Mets. Shields High from WGY New York.
So James is also miserable.
Yeah, the Mets not so good?
They are usually the laughing stock of baseball.
How can that be the case? New York is such a big sports market. So much
Yeah,
money
well,
here.
they have ownership that refuses to spend money on the team, but they love when we spend money, buying merchandise and tickets and food and all that stuff.
Yeah,
But they won't spend it on players.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not a recipe for success, I feel like.
It is not. Not in baseball where there's no salary cap.
What are like the mega teams?
Well, the Yankees, they're the ultimate team. The Red Sox, the Dodgers, most of the big
ones,
market
kind of the marquee names. There's not like a team. Yeah. It's not like, Golden State Warriors were a joke 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Now they're like the team.
Well, now they're not anymore. This year they have a lot of players injured, but.
Well, okay. Well, I almost dropped some sports knowledge.
Almost.
He didn't let me get
away.
It was
very close.
Yeah, I knew more about sports back in the 90s than I do now, but now I have to just read all the time so I can tell Team Buck what's going on.
You still think the Knicks are a good team?
Are they not a good team?
Oh, my God. They're the worst team in basketball.
That's really it. That's another. How is that possible? They got the biggest basketball market in the country here.
Yes.
New York City loves basketball.
Well, another ownership problem.
Is that the Dolans?
The Dolans, yeah.
I've heard stories.
He's a joke.
I knew somebody who used to work for them and said that it was amazing to work for a sports franchise where the people who owned the franchise didn't care about sports.
Yeah. See, if he was like to the Knicks like he is to the Rangers, the Knicks would be good. He just leaves the Rangers alone, lets the hockey people do the hockey things. Doesn't do that with basketball.
I see.
Yeah.
Cody writes, "Hey, Buck, have you ever looked up Porter Stansberry before on Wikipedia?" Yeah, Cody. Porter's my man. Porter's a friend of mine. He's great. So I know all about Porter. Let's see what else we have here. Gina. "Hey, Buck, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves is okay, but it's not just he has no English accent. He starts off with one badly, in my opinion, and within the first 20 minutes or so, it's completely gone." Is that really true? But I will say Alan Rickman is a badass sheriff of Nottingham. "I'll cut your heart out with a spoon." Shields high. Gina, you may be right about the performance that what's his name turned in for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I don't remember. I just remember him walking around like, "I am Robin Hood. I do not have an accent." Everyone else is like, "Oh, is that Robin Hood? Is he trying to steal bread from the sheriff and give it to the poor people?" It was like that, Everyone else has got like a real serious accent. He's like, "I am Robin Hood. I have no accent." I didn't think that was cool.
Yeah, if everyone else has an accent, you need an accent.
They're walking around. They're like, "Oh, but he's so good with the bow and arrow. Look at him. He takes the bow. He shoots the arrow right straight on." Duncan, the blind. I sound just like the guy, Duncan, the assistant that he has. Like, "Thank you, Robin Hood. You gave me a bit of bread. It's the 90s, so we think that all British people talk like this a little bit. Unless they're the Queen, then they sound fancy."
I do love a nice British accent.
Yeah, exactly. I should probably fake one at bars. It'd be helpful here in New York City. All right, that's going to be it today for the Buck Sexton Show team. It has been fantastic, as always. I hope you agree. Spread the word far and wide. Post the links that we share on Facebook and on Twitter, please, to your own page if you don't mind, so some of your friends, some of your folks can see it. That would be a big help. We are trying to grow the show. Have a fantastic Veterans Day, all of you, please. Say thank you to a veteran, and we'll talk tomorrow. Shields high.